Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardha Hari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardha Hari Yashoda Nandana Rajanjananjana Yashoda Nandana Rajanjananjana Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Rajanjanandana Yashoda Nandana Rajanjanandana Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, 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 Haribo. Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam yena bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapadakamala Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sarajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanditamsha Nama Om Vishnu-padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavani Paschatadeshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Pranamami Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivatsari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Grantharaj Srimad-Bhagavatam Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta-vrinda Ki Jai. So, good morning, everyone. Devotees feel awkward to say good morning. I don't know why. It's common culture. Yeah. Yona pot kivanot, they say in Hungary. And in Sanskrit, suprabhatam. Maybe everyone would feel easier if we said suprabhatam. There we go. Okay. All right. So we're fortunate to be reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 71. The Lord travels to Indraprastha, and we're coming toward the end of this chapter, and we have a few verses to read in series, and then I have some thoughts to share related to our conference topic, and we'll find ways to relate also to what we're reading in the Bhagavatam. So we're starting with verse 25, and is this the one written on the board?
Yes.
It is, okay. So we can read together. dṛṣṭvā viklinna-hṛdayaḥ. dṛṣṭvā viklinna-hṛdayaḥ. Yeah, this is because there's two N's. In viklinna, it becomes kind of extended. Not viklinna, but viklinna. dṛṣṭvā viklinna-hṛdayaḥ. Kṛṣṇaṁ snehena pāṇḍavaḥ. Kṛṣṇaṁ snehena pāṇḍavaḥ. cirād dṛṣṭaṁ priya-tamam. sasvaje punaḥ. Sasvaje punaḥ. Okay, let's all try this together. dṛṣṭvā viklinna-hṛdayaḥ. Kṛṣṇaṁ snehena pāṇḍavaḥ. cirād dṛṣṭaṁ priya-tamam. sasvaje punaḥ. Okay, let's see what it means. dṛṣṭvā, seeing. Viklinna, melted. Hṛdayaḥ, yes, his heart. Kṛṣṇam, I've heard of him somewhere. Kṛṣṇa, snehena, with affection. Pāṇḍavaḥ, the son of Pāṇḍu. cirāt, after a long time. dṛṣṭam, seen. priya-tamam, his dearmost friend. sasvaje, he embraced him. Atha, thereupon. punaḥ. Yes, again and again. Translation, and again we have translations and purports by the followers of Srila Prabhupada, as Shyamasundar Prabhu mentioned yesterday, Hridayananda Goswami and Gopi Puranadana Prabhu for the most part. So here, translation, the heart of King Yudhiṣṭhira melted with affection when he saw his dearmost friend, Lord Krishna, after such a long separation, and he embraced the Lord again and again. Oh, I wanted to, speaking of who is translating, who is commenting these, many years ago, 1982 maybe, I was traveling in South India with one South Indian brahmachari, doing some research, on Nrsimha worship. And we visited one Gaudiya Math at the place where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met Ramananda Roy. And it was a small, very small Gaudiya Math. They had maybe 5 devotees or so, including the Swami, one of Srila Prabhupada's godmothers. Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Maharaj, Shripad Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Maharaj. And they were very kind, they welcomed us, we could stay there overnight. And the next morning I had conversation with Puri Maharaj, and he spoke very fluent English. And so this was around 1982, it was before the 10th, 11th, and 12th cantos had been completed, published by Srila Prabhupada, by the devotees, by the MVT. And one of the things he said to me is, you must complete the Bhagavatam. He was saying this is important. He understood Prabhupada has left. And you have qualified devotees in your Sangha, so you must complete this. He was very strong on this point. I found it very interesting, very significant. And so I said, I will tell them. Okay. And they did complete. Dorbhyāṁ pariṣvajya ramāmalālayaṁ mukunda-gātraṁ nṛ-patir hatāṣuvi lebe parang nirriting aśru-locano rishyattanur vismrita-loka vibrama. The eternal form of Lord Krishna is the everlasting residence of the goddess of fortune. As soon as King Yudhiṣṭhira embraced him, the king became free of all the contamination of material existence. He immediately felt transcendental bliss and merged in an ocean of happiness. There were tears in his eyes, and his body shook due to ecstasy. Aśru-locano. His eyes were full of tears. He completely forgot that he was living in this material world. Vismrita-loka vibrama. And the purport is as follows. The above translation is taken from Srila Prabhupada's Kṛṣṇa, his book, Kṛṣṇa book. So it's, in this case, a direct translation. And we go on. I was requested that we read through verse 30. I'm going to just go to the English, I think. Then, Bhima, his eyes brimming with tears. It's hard to imagine Bhima with tears in his eyes. His eyes brimming with tears laughed with joy as he embraced his maternal cousin Kṛṣṇa. Arjuna and the twins, Nakula and Sahadeva, also joyfully embraced their dearmost friend, the infallible Lord, and they cried profusely. Wow. After Arjuna had embraced him once more, and Nakula and Sahadeva had offered him their obeisances, Lord Krishna bowed down to the brahmanas and elders present, thus properly honoring the respectable members of the Kuru, Srinjaya, and Kaikaya clans. And we have a short purport here. Srila Sridhar Swami mentions that since Arjuna was considered Lord Krishna's social equal, when Arjuna tried to bow down to him, Lord Krishna held Arjuna by his arms so that he could only embrace him. The twins, however, being junior cousins, bowed down and grasped Lord Krishna's feet. So there's some definite consciousness, awareness, and care for social etiquette in terms of hierarchy. There's a lot of importance put to this. And it's interesting that Krishna, when Arjuna wants to bow down to Krishna, and this is prior to the Kurukshetra war, which means prior to the speaking of Bhagavad Gita, which means prior to Arjuna's getting the full understanding that we get from the Gita about who is Krishna. At this point, if I understand the chronology, Arjuna and Krishna are friends. They're very good friends. But Krishna, and of course he knows Krishna is very special. But later on, he's going to be extremely embarrassed in the 11th chapter of the Gita for having been so familiar with him. In any case, here he's being a bit formal, and Krishna says, that doesn't work. We're equals. Come on, let's embrace. So that's very sweet. Sutas, Magadas, Gandharvas, Vandis, jesters and brahmanas, all glorified the lotus-eyed Lord, some reciting prayers, some dancing and singing as mridangas, conch shells. The English correct translation of the word conch, according to the dictionary, is conch. Anyway, kettle drums, vinas, little trivia there. Kettle drums, vinas, panavas, and gomukas resounded. Don't ask me what all these... I can tell you what a mridanga is, but not what a panava or a gomuka is. But gomuka means the face of a cow, right? So a drum, which is like the face of a cow, I suppose. Anyone know? Yeah. Oh, so similar to a mridanga, perhaps. Thus surrounded, okay, we have verse 30. Evam suhridbhi paryasta punyashloka shikamani sangstu yamano bhagavan vivesha lamkritam puram. Thus surrounded by his well-wishing relatives and praised on all sides, Lord Krishna, the crest jewel of the justly renowned, entered the decorated city. And a short purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, quote, while Lord Krishna was entering the city, all the people were talking among themselves about the glories of the Lord, praising his transcendental name, quality, form, etc. So I think we're invited to picture this scene. There's picture and imagine hearing this scene. I like to say there's a lot of scope in spiritual life for using our imagination, and I think this is one of them. That's another topic. I won't go into that now, but I would like to seg into something which I want to connect actually to Thibault's presentation day before yesterday, where he made a very nice, let's keep this. No, I think, we can mark it here. And you can take, thank you. In the conference, he made a very nice connection between what here we are calling prema culture to ecology, to the mode of goodness, to bhakti. where there's a kind of, don't mind my using a word from the Western Latin tradition, there's a telos. You know this word, telos? Telos. Teleology, telos. Charlotte knows. Telos means how would you define telos? It's a purpose. It is the final cause in Aristotelian way of understanding causes. There's 4 different types of cause, and the last of these is the final cause. Thank you. And hold on here. No, whoops, how come it doesn't show? There we go. So, okay, what do I want to talk about? That's not the one I want. What I want is this one, yes, okay. Bear with me, get there. And we're going to close this and open, minimize this, and go there. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so I was thinking about this this directionality of what we're about in the practice of spiritual life, in which the founder Acharya of our Krishna Consciousness Society put so much emphasis on both ends, if you like. On the one end, what we've been just reading is about the joyfulness of spiritual experience that the residents of Indraprastha have as Lord Krishna himself personally comes and they're directly embracing him. It's all about this intensity of joyful, liberated feeling, which we're being invited to participate in, initially by picturing, by imagining, but also by a whole process of practice of Krishna consciousness, of sadhana bhakti and so on, and by living a life which is in the mode of goodness, which is pure and which is supported practically in this world by solving the problem, which is, Prabhupada says, not a problem, of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. We'll get to that. And the title of this little series, I've titled, you'll see why I'm calling it the Four-Sided Tunnel, Reflections on Spiritual Ecology, because I'm a little bit thinking on this level of ecology in relation to the others, because we hear nowadays so much about ecology, and of course we would be interested not in mundane ecology, but if we're going to use this term, we would be interested in spiritual ecology, sorry. Srila Prabhupada spoke in a lecture on the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 13, this famous verse, Mahatmanastu mang partha daivim prakritim ashrita. We are all engaged in studying temporary small things, problems, small problems. What is that problem? Ahara nidra bhayamaitunam. he's quoting from a quite famous verse, ahara nidra bhayamaitunam cha samanyametat pashabir naranam dharmo hi tesham adhiko vishesho dharmena hina pashabir samana. All the animals are engaged in eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Human beings also, but there's a difference. The difference is dharma. If there's no dharma, then pashabi samana, then we are no different from animals. How to eat, how to sleep, how to defend, and how to mate. These four principles, they are very minor problems. They are not at all problems. Because automatically these problems are solved. Automatically. And then he quotes from the 11th canto, Vishaya Kalu Sarvatasya. So this led me to reflect a little on the famous account in Canto 4 of Prithu interacting with the earth. The earth, very intriguingly, the earth takes the form of a cow. And for some time, Prithu is extremely angry with the cow to the point that he's threatening to kill this cow. And he says, if you don't yield to the needs of the world, I'm going to kill you, and he even says, and I'm going to distribute you your meat. Yeah, he said that. So, but at one point, they're having, we might say nowadays, a dialogue, and personified earth as a cow is speaking. So we hear the voice of the earth, and she says, "O great hero, protector of living entities, if you desire to relieve the living entities by supplying them sufficient grain, and if you desire to nourish them by taking milk from me, you should make arrangements to bring a calf suitable for this purpose and a pot in which the milk can be kept, as well as a milkman to do the work. Since I will be very much affectionate toward my calf, your desire to take milk from me will be fulfilled." So she gives the general directions, and then how that's applied is quite intriguing. First, Prithu himself comes and milks the cow, and then all kinds of different types of beings come and engage the cow earth, milking her, quote unquote. Here we have to use the term milking figuratively, for whatever it is that they are interested in, whatever sustains them. And so even the demons get their nourishment, which is what? Alcohol, I think, right? And the snakes get their venom, and but all of the beings get what is the sages get the Vedas, I think, like that. All right, here is where the idea of the tunnel comes, the four-sided tunnel, which I bring up because Srila Prabhupada, what did he say? He said, eating, sleeping, mating, these are not problems, he said. They come automatically. Shri Radha Gopinath ki jai. It's not a problem to get the basics of life, to do the prema garden, the prema culture. It's not a problem. What is the problem? The problem is the lack of spiritual vision, the lack of the telos, the directionality of what Srila Prabhupada so artfully called Krishna consciousness. So there is in present day Western, but we have to also more broadly say global culture, a lot of resistance to the public discussion of spirituality, in which divinity, in which the theistic understanding is given. And one scholar who I was happy to meet several years ago, the late Huston Smith, he was a very famous scholar of religion in America for decades, wrote, I think this was his last book, Why Religion Matters, the Fate of the Human Spirit in an Age of Disbelief. And in this book he describes what he calls a tunnel of spirituality and maintaining the status quo. And this tunnel, he says, has four sides, and these are listed here: scientism, modern education, modern law, mass media, and I added social media. He didn't include social media, but I took the liberty. This is kind of a later development. So I'm just touching on this. The first one in particular, scientism, and here we make a distinction between science and scientism. Scientism is an ism. It's a theology. It's a philosophy that ultimate reality can be reduced to whatever we understand by the term matter, and thus everything ultimately, potentially, can be understood through scientific research. And since ultimately everything can be understood, everything can be controlled, and everything can be arranged for the happiness and perfection of human life. There's no little discussion of animal life or other forms of life. So that's different from science, and science, I would suggest Srila Prabhupada did not condemn science. That would be another discussion, but we, I think, make a mistake if we think we're following our acharyas and sort of blanketly defending science. That's a bigger topic. Modern education. If we think about how textbooks are written, if we think about how teachers are hired, and how research projects are controlled in terms of money and so on. And a similar points can be made about modern law and mass media in terms of trivializing spirituality. And this Huston Smith elaborates on all of this. And one part of an elaboration on scientism, he speaks about the tilt of the negotiating table. So you have a table, and maybe you have a person on either end, and they're negotiating something. If the table is, leaning one way or not the other, then the person on the low end has a special challenge to present their case. That's the point he's making, and he gives an example. There's an academic journal published by, I think, University of Chicago, called ISKCON, or ISKCON, which is dedicated to discussion of science and religion. And there's an institute in California, near San Francisco, at the Graduate Theological Union, where I studied. It's called the Center for Theology and Natural Sciences, and they encourage dialogue. So this sounds good, right? Good, we're getting dialogue between science and religion. Well, he's making the point. There is no stated policy, but an inductive scan suggests a bias against those who, first, criticize Darwinism, second, argue that the universe is intelligently designed, and third, accept the possibility that God may, at times, intervene in history in ways other than through the laws by which nature works. So he's kind of prodding in a gentle way in this way. Okay, so there's this tunnel, and we have this expression in English. I don't know if it's in Dutch. Tunnel vision. Yeah. Also in Hungary. Okay. So what he's saying in this book, in effect, is everyone in society has this tunnel vision, and we can understand why. There's 4 sides to this tunnel vision. Srila Prabhupada comes into the midst of this situation of tunnel vision and gives a challenge. This is from Canto 1, Chapter 8, verse 40, the purport. Human prosperity flourishes by natural gifts and not by gigantic industrial enterprises. The natural law is that the human being may take advantage of these godly gifts by nature and satisfactorily flourish on them without being captivated by the exploitative motive of lording it over material nature. The more we attempt to exploit material nature according to our whims of enjoyment, interesting expression, the more we shall become entrapped by the reaction of such exploitative attempts. So here Srila Prabhupada is kind of encapsulating what's going on in this tunnel. He doesn't name these 4 sides explicitly, but one might extract from this the implication of that. Okay, now now I want to refer to another author. His name is Mark Zuckerberg. He wrote an article called Beyond Nature, and he put nature in quotation marks, toward more engaged and careful, and he intentionally misspelled the word careful ways of relating to the environment. And he identifies 2 types of mentality. The first is the objectivist techno-scientific point of view, in which nature is a kind of standing reserve for human use. It has no intrinsic value. And nature is understood in terms of resources and natural capital and ecosystem services. So this is, there's a whole area of study now called eco-linguistics, how we speak about the environment. we might want to say that much of it is actually ego linguistics. He's saying a similar problem of perspective is what he calls the subjectivist romantic point of view. And he says both of them present a distorted view of the what he calls basic existential relation between humans and their environment. So I made a little chart to show these are two modernist approaches, the objectivist techno-scientific perception and the subjectivist romantic. Now the thing is, they're both anthropocentric. Neither of them are theocentric in any sense. So you can read here the privileging of science versus privileging subjective feeling, dominance of nature versus love of nature, artificial world, which is mechanistic, versus notion of harmony, naturalness, authenticity. We also like to speak about harmony and so on, but he's warning, he's pointing out, yes, but both of these, nature is a container of resources versus nature, and here is, I think, the point with subjectivism. It's a mirror of our subjective feelings, a paradise lost, a place of harmony and goodness. We may want to remember that in the Bhagavatam it says, ahastani sahastanam apadani chatuspadam pāṇḍuni tatra mahatam jivo jivasya jivanam. This is the harsh reality of nature. Those without hands are food for those with hands. Those without feet are food for those with feet. And in general, all living entities survive on other living entities. That's nature. So this the point here, I think, for us to reflect on, we might tend to identify ourselves in this sort of subjectivist romantic side if we were to choose sides. And I think the author here is making a good point that we need to consider, that they're both actually egocentric. And this is not what we want. Again, Srila Prabhupada says, I guess it's not the same. Okay, same purport. If we have sufficient grains, fruits, vegetables, and herbs, then what is the necessity of running a slaughterhouse and killing poor animals? A man need not kill an animal if he has sufficient grains and vegetables to eat. But all these natural gifts are dependent on the mercy of the Lord. What we need, therefore, is to be obedient to the laws of the Lord and achieve the perfection of human life by devotional service. So that's a simple solution Srila Prabhupada is giving. Being aware everything is dependent on the mercy, the grace of the Lord. Now when we think about ecology, we might be thinking in terms of interdependence. And this, I think, is an important notion also. And it's also, it's important when we start thinking about a society of people engaged in these practices, permaculture, prema-culture, leading to bhakti, then of course we want to think in terms of society. And when we think in terms of society, there's a kind of horizontal dimension and a vertical dimension. And Srila Prabhupada here is emphasizing, first point is to recognize the vertical dimension. And that is what is being ignored, essentially, in this tunnel, which is the present situation of modern life. I think it's helpful to be aware of this way of understanding in order to get out of the tunnel and in order to help others get out of the tunnel. I think we would all agree there is a kind of tunnel vision, where spirituality is somehow missing. What we're reading in the Bhagavatam is the light at the end of the tunnel. Of course, it's not light in any impersonal sense, rather it's light of the Lord Himself inviting us. And the experience that He's inviting us to is very strongly suggested in this meeting that we have just read of these very dear friends of Krishna, relatives of Krishna actually, meeting in Indraprastha. And we can keep this in our minds as a sense of hope against hope, which is one of the characteristics of bhava. Even we may not feel that we're on such a level, but there's sometimes a sense of hopelessness due to what we see in our surroundings in this dark tunnel. But we can always, as devotees, be directing our attention to the light, which is at the end of the tunnel. There is a tunnel, but it has an end. Somehow we got into this tunnel, we can get out, and we can take as many as possible with us. Hare Krishna. Grantara Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. If there's any further reflection on these topics, we can discuss briefly. Yes. Bit of technology fixing here.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, for that very interesting perspective. When I was listening to your presentation, I had a reflection that when we look at the different possible systems which deal with more natural production of food, permaculture, biodynamics, syntropic farming, they all have at the end that hope of creating a paradise. Mm-hmm. And John Liu, which is one of the big names, he's doing a project of 20,000 hectares in China and 3,000 hectares in Spain. He says, let's make paradise. So it's very clear that there is that idea. So the reflection led to a little of a question. In my reflection, I felt that for us Vaishnavas, it's really important to reflect deeply on this, because we attempted to reject the scientism and dive into the romantic vision without a very clear understanding of perhaps what Thibaut was presenting as the prema culture, which is mode of goodness, but it has a very definite purpose. So the question was, in what levels could we engage in both unlearning, because we come with a baggage, and opening discussions like this to have a very good vision of what type of practice we should be doing. Because I see that both in our farming practices or in our getting distance from anything which is mechanical, scientific, we kind of feel or get guilty of being romantic in that sense. And the pragmatic, which would be getting the food and the grains and to practice bhakti, would be the tangent needed.
Yeah, this is another $64,000 question. But I think you've brought up a useful word, pragmatic. Prabhupada's phrase, do the needful, I think is applicable in so many ways. But it's a do the needful, which, as you said also, needs to be done thoughtfully, with awareness that we don't want to be part of any of these traps. And that's going to mean being, I think, especially thoughtful in relation to the principle of yukta vairagya, that anasaktasya vishayan yatarhan upayunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchate. This definition of Rupa Goswami of detached engagement. Yuktam, as you may know, is grammatically related to the word yoga, and vairagyam, viraga, raga means attachment. Essentially, all of these forms of tunnel vision are forms of attachment. Paradise are forms of trying to make a permanent solution in this world, when we understand that's not going to work. When Prabhupada speaks about farming and cow protection, very much he speaks at the same time about chanting Hare Krishna. He says, you grow your grains, you have your cows, you have your milk, then you can peacefully chant Hare Krishna. So it's like, okay, we've taken care of, the bodily needs, now we can chant Hare Krishna. And that sense is, that spirit, I think, is what we want to always be aiming toward. It could be thought of as a contradiction in terms. Yuktam vairagyam. Vairagya means ayukta, ayoga, disconnection. And in fact, the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali is essentially, although it's called Yoga Sutra, it's mainly about viyoga, it's mainly about disconnection. So that's not bhakti. Bhakti is about yukta vairagya. And we'll talk about this in our next session. How do we do farming and be Krishna conscious? But yeah, and we'll discuss various ways to do that. Side.
Relative question. Thank you very much for your explanations. I was just wondering, you were telling that from this Bhakti Vaibhava Maharaj, he told you
Puri
Maharaj,
yeah,
that he said that you should finish the Bhagavatam, and he said you have to tell them. But did you tell them, or they did it spontaneous?
No, they were already working on it. I didn't really have to do anything. They were.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was quite a major task. Srila Prabhupada completed chapter 13 of the 10th canto, which left 13 minus 13 from 90 is 77 chapters plus the 11th canto, which is 30-something chapters, 36 maybe, The 12th canto is 13 chapters, I think. I don't know how many verses, but quite a lot. And so it was taking time. But you mentioned yesterday when they published these final cantos. What is it? You mentioned a year. Oh, yeah, I don't remember now either. It was after I met this godbrother Prabhupada. That's all. Yeah. No, they were working on it. Yeah. Prabhupada had given that instruction. Right? Yes, Tej.
On this aspect of this aspiration for this paradise, and how then you contrast it with how we have to be realistic and come to the core, which is being thoroughly Krishna conscious and chanting Hare Krishna. And I was thinking that is this, maybe it's a bit of a contradictory question, but is this paradise view such a bad thing? Because if you look at the missionary spirit that the older generation had, and we are actually, the way human psyche works, this paradise aspiration is helpful to achieve big things. And sometimes to make things happen, you have to believe in bigger than what you see. And sometimes I feel like this paradise view, of course then Krishna, the Krishna factor is there, where we are humble and we realize what's the core value, which is chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. But then at the same time I'm just thinking of whether we should really move away so much from the paradise aspiration, because I feel like it is kind of a driving force also.
Yes, good point. I would say we're pursuing spiritual paradise. Srila Prabhupada referred to his temples as Vaikuntha, and in that sense, and of course we want to understand temple as not just four walls and that's it, but we want to understand it in an extended sense, which is including, as you have here, this is in so many ways Vaikuntha and more atmosphere with all that you have going on. This would be more than many people could even begin to imagine as a paradise, isn't it? The Radhadesh community. I mean, so many people all over the world struggle in so many ways, including just getting a full meal per day. And you could say, yes, sort of psychologically, we want to pursue what for us is perhaps a kind of paradise. But maybe here what's useful to think about is something which was discussed in this Swedish bhakti retreat, the nature of conviction. Conviction can be a good thing or a bad thing. If you have conviction and you think that's the end, the final thing to be achieved, and it's not actually the final thing to be achieved, that can be a problem. Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kahe Sudrida Nischoy Krishna Bhakti Koile Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. To have the conviction, the Vishvasa, or Nischoy, Nischoy, is good when you understand Krishna Bhakti Koile Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. If I'm just engaged in devotional service, all duties, anything necessary is accomplished. That's very good. But lesser convictions, so to say, could be a problem. So we might think about it in that way as well. one person's paradise may be another person's hell. What? So we may have different ideas of paradise, right?
Sun at 35 degrees, the hot sun at 35 degrees Celsius.
Right. Yeah. But yes, as devotees, we're pursuing a higher perfection in this life, but it's Krishna-centered. And the devotee is ready to go to hell for Krishna, right? As Chitraketu says. So paradise, no problem. Also Chitraketu said, if I'm going to heaven, that's also okay. If I go to hell, that's also okay. But the heavenly perfection, we're also very realist. We aspire for a situation in which we can peacefully practice and spread Krishna consciousness. That's our paradise, I would say. Yeah. Good. On that note, on that peaceful note, I wish you all a wonderful day today. And Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki Jai. Gaur Premanand.